Dalmatians. We all know them for their iconic spots, their boundless energy, and those curious, intelligent eyes. They're the dogs from our favorite movies, the ones that seem to radiate pure joy and excitement. But behind that playful exterior, there's a depth of sensitivity that often goes unnoticed. This is a story about that quiet, gentle heart. Our story begins in a bright, sunny home nestled in a quiet suburb. This was the kingdom of a Dalmatian named Spot. For several years, Spot's life was a masterclass in routine and simple pleasures. He lived by the clock, but it was a clock set by joy. The mornings were for brisk walks, the world a symphony of new smells. Afternoons were for long, luxurious naps in that perfect patch of sun that streamed through the living room window. Evenings were for cuddles on the couch, his head resting comfortably on a familiar lap. His world was predictable, peaceful, and perfect. Then, one day, the symphony of his life changed its tune. A new sound entered the home, a new scent, a new rhythm. A tiny human arrived. Her name was Sophie. From the very first moment Sophie was carried through the door, wrapped in a soft blanket, Spot knew everything was different. The house, once his predictable domain, now held an element of the unknown. There were tiny hands that waved in the air, new sounds he'd never heard before, soft coos, sudden cries. The movements were hesitant, small, yet they commanded the attention of the entire household. A dog with Spot's energy might have been expected to jump, to bark, to express his curiosity in a boisterous way, but Spot did none of that. He simply watched. His usually restless legs were still, his expressive ears perked, taking in every detail of this new little person. He was a silent, attentive observer. Each day, a new routine began to form around Sophie. She would spend time on a soft, colorful blanket spread out in the middle of the living room. And each day, Spot would take up his position nearby, not too close but never too far. He sat with a quiet dignity, his head resting on his paws, his eyes fixed on the baby. He was studying her, learning her language of tiny movements and soft sounds. One afternoon, as Sophie lay on her blanket, her little hand reached out, exploring the world around her. Spot, who had been watching intently, saw the movement. He didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, he slowly, gently lowered his head, bringing his soft, velvety ear within her reach. He allowed her small, clumsy fingers to brush against his fur. He held perfectly still, a statue of patience. There were no sudden moves, no loud reactions. Just a calm, unwavering attention that seemed to say, "I am here. It's okay." Over the next few weeks, something beautiful began to unfold. Spot started to sync his life with Sophie's. He began to understand her rhythms. When she cooed or let out a tiny happy giggle, Spot's tail would give a slow, gentle wag, a quiet acknowledgement of her joy. When she drifted off to sleep, her tiny chest rising and falling, Spot would find a spot to rest nearby, close enough to be a guardian but never so close as to be intrusive. He was a silent sentinel, watching over her dreams. The days turned into months. Sophie grew more mobile. She learned to roll over. One sunny afternoon, she made a determined effort and rolled from her back to her tummy, a small but monumental achievement. As she wiggled and explored the new perspective, Spot, who was dozing nearby, lifted his head. He watched her for a moment, then calmly stood up, shifted his position, and lay down again, creating a soft, furry barrier at the edge of the blanket. He wasn't told to do this. It was a pure, gentle instinct. He was making sure she was safe, ensuring he was close enough to watch but never to overwhelm. As Sophie grew into a toddler, their bond deepened. She learned to crawl, and her first destination was often the patient, spotted dog who was always nearby. She would pull on his ears, pat his back with her chubby hands, and sometimes use him as a soft pillow. Through it all, Spot remained the epitome of patience. He absorbed her clumsy affection with a quiet grace that was truly remarkable. He was her constant companion, her furry shadow. When Sophie took her first wobbly steps, it was Spot's tail she reached for to steady herself. When she fell, which she often did, he would be there to nudge her with his nose, as if to say, "Get up, try again. I'm right here." He was her cheerleader, her support system, her best friend, years past. Sophie was no longer a baby, but a young girl with a head full of stories and a heart full of love for her dog. When friends would come over, they'd see Spot and expect the high-energy, playful Dalmatian they saw in movies. And while Spot still loved a good run in the park, his true nature at home was one of serene companionship. Later in life, when Sophie would think back on her childhood, her memories of Spot wouldn't be of a whirlwind of black and white spots. They wouldn't be of frantic games of fetch or loud, excited barking. Instead, she would remember his steady, grounding presence. She'd remember his patience as she learned to walk. She'd remember his quiet companionship on lazy afternoons when she'd reread a book with her head resting against his warm side. She would remember the feeling of his soft fur under her small fingers, and the unwavering look in his eyes that always made her feel safe and loved. Spot taught his family a profound lesson. He showed them that love isn't always about grand gestures or loud declarations. It's not always about boundless energy and excitement. Sometimes the deepest, most powerful love is quiet. It's patient. It's simply being there, day in and day out, a constant, comforting presence in a world that is always changing. It's a quiet wag of a tail, a gentle nudge of a nose, a patient watchfulness that says everything without a single sound. Because sometimes the most profound love isn't loud at all, it's just being there. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories about the incredible animals we share our lives with. We'll see you in the next one.